It all started with a simple pool party, and ended with a lawsuit, arrests, and a complete breakup with my family. Today I'm telling you how a family cabin sparked a sibling war and how my life changed completely. It was an ordinary afternoon. One of those when you expect to enjoy yourself, eat something delicious, and spend time with your family. My wife and I arrived in good spirits to a party being held at my parents' house. Everything seemed in order, the grill was on, the drinks were cold, and the atmosphere felt warm. Familiar. For a moment, I thought it would be a peaceful day. But it was that very thought, that feeling of security, that made me let my guard down. And in this family, that's always a mistake. The children, all my sister's children, began running wild throughout the house and yard. They screamed, pushed, and threw things. Like a stampede of small tornadoes. No one was supervising them. Their parents, my sisters and their husbands, were too busy laughing, drinking, and pretending to be blind. And then, I saw it. Without asking, without warning, 3 of the children, 2 10-year-olds and a 9-year-old, jumped straight into the deep end of the pool. Without floats. Without knowing how to swim well. Without anyone telling them a word. My heart stopped for a second. My wife and I approached, worried. She was even more upset than I was. But before I could say anything, the youngest boy, the 9-year-old, came up behind me and, without saying a word, tried to push me into the water. Just like a game. I managed to dodge him out of pure reflex. I turned around, surprised, expecting to see a shocked face, an apology, something. But what I found was worse, absolute indifference. No one stood up. No one scolded him. No one seemed to think this, any of it, was wrong. And that's when I knew, something had broken. Not in the child, not in the pool, but in the air. In the family dynamic. And the silence that followed, was as uncomfortable as the noise of what was to come next. My brother-in-law, my older sister's husband, was already visibly drunk. Or maybe more than drunk. He staggered to his feet, still holding the glass, and started yelling at me. He yelled that I ruined the atmosphere, that I was always overreacting, that they were just kids. Each word was accompanied by a strong breath of beer and arrogance. And just as he tried to approach me in a threatening manner, he tripped. He tripped over a cooler, lost his balance, and fell face first onto the pavement. The impact was sharp. Brutal. And when he got up, his face was covered in blood. A deep wound that clearly needed immediate medical attention. And who ended up taking him to the ER? My dad. He, who up until that point had tried to stay out of the way, ended up being the designated driver. But he was red-faced with rage. Not from the blood. Not from the accident. But because he understood, just like me, that all of it, everything that happened that afternoon, was just the beginning of the real problem. I thought after my brother-in-law's blow, the party would end there. And in a way, it did, but not how I imagined. My wife and I left early, feeling a mix of discomfort and exhaustion. The atmosphere had become heavy. As if something had exploded, but no one wanted to talk about it. That night, as we were trying to unplug, the next blow came. A text message. Then another. And another. My sister, the oldest, had started a family group on WhatsApp. And instead of finding a solution or apologizing, she started attacking me. They called us exaggerated. Selfish. Cold. That we were ruining the family. How could we possibly not take a little push in the pool? As if I were the problem for not letting myself fall. Then their husbands joined in. My brothers-in-law. Each with their own sarcastic, mocking, even threatening comments. Not an apology. Not a shred of self-criticism. Just venom in the form of emojis and midnight misspellings. That's when my wife, bless her heart, picked up the phone, looked me in the eye, and said, "Block them." And we did. All 4 of them. No more beating around the bush. Minutes later, the phone rang. It was my mom. She was crying. She'd read everything. She and Dad were also in that chat, and they were devastated. Not just by what was said, but by how it was said. By the cruelty. By the nerve. And so, a decision was made that would change everything. The next morning, my parents invited my sisters, without their children, to their house. They wanted to talk. Set boundaries. Clarify rules. What we received was a sort of apology, forced, half-hearted, sent from my mother's phone. Lack of enthusiasm. Lack of conviction. But there it was. I didn't say much. My wife was sitting next to me. Her serious look was enough to keep me quiet. I just responded with a "thank you," and that there was nothing more to discuss. And when I thought it was all over, I unblocked them. That same night, one of my brothers-in-law sent me a message. An apology? A reflection? No. He asked me to pay for the cell phones his children broke in the pool. 2 phones. Very expensive, according to him. My answer was simple: never. I took a screenshot of the message, sent it to my parents, and wrote the following: "We're fed up. We're cutting off contact with my sisters and their husbands. Don't invite us to any more parties or get-togethers if they're going to be there." Then, I blocked everyone again. That's when everything really exploded. My dad called them. All of them. And he devastated them. He told them their grandchildren were no longer welcome in their house, indefinitely. That he and mom were no longer going to babysit for them. They could forget about access to the place they enjoyed most, the vacation home. And to top it off, he revealed the truth. That vacation home wasn't theirs. Or mom's. It was mine. Mine and my wife's. I had bought it. I paid all the expenses. And now, they wouldn't set foot in it again without our permission. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Peace for having set boundaries. Peace for having closed a door I should have closed years ago. But most of all, peace for having seen my parents act with dignity. Just when we thought the family storm was beginning to subside, the next bombshell arrived. A betrayal no one saw coming, except me, but which until then I couldn't prove. After cutting off contact with my sisters and their husbands, I began to suspect something was wrong with the vacation home. The bills kept coming. The maintenance bill, the repairs, the taxes, all in my name, of course. And then David, the property manager, that man who became my closest ally, revealed something that chilled my blood. It turns out one of my sisters had been renting the house out without my permission. She rented it out to groups of friends, hunters, even for parties and clandestine get-togethers. She used the house as a small side business, generating income on the sly. Not only that. The house was suffering from accelerated wear and tear. Broken furniture, damaged appliances, trash everywhere. Management didn't even know who the real tenants were. They sent me pictures. Pictures of crowded parties, empty bottles, colored lights, and a total lack of respect for the property I had worked so hard to buy for my family. The worst thing wasn't the house itself, but what it meant, the disloyalty. The total lack of respect for something I had done with my heart. My effort, my money, to create a space where my family could gather and enjoy together. But to them, it was just another way to make a quick buck, regardless of the consequences. When I confronted my sisters via text, the response was cold, evasive, and full of excuses. "We're just trying to help maintain the house," they said. "It's no big deal." But to me, it was a straight-up betrayal. That's when I decided I couldn't go on like this anymore. I hired David to monitor the property with cameras and alarms. Ensure no one entered without permission. Ensure expenses were documented in detail. And I made a final decision: if the family couldn't respect that place, I would have to take legal action to protect it. This house was more than bricks and wood. It was the symbol of my peace, of my hope for healing the family wounds. And if I had to fight alone to do that, so be it. And so, what began as a family celebration ended in a battle of trust, betrayals, and difficult decisions. The story isn't over yet. I thought the worst was over. But reality hit even harder. One night, while my wife and I were out, I received a call that chilled my blood. David, the property manager, alerted me: someone had broken into the property. My brothers-in-law, the same ones who had caused so much drama, used a grinder to cut the chain securing the property. They damaged the front gate, smashed the lock, and forced open several interior doors to get in. They even managed to get into the barn, for no apparent reason. Why? Only they know. The police arrived quickly, thanks to the notifications from the camera system I installed. They arrested them right there, red-handed. The accusations were clear: trespassing, property damage, and threats. And although they tried to justify it with lies and excuses, the evidence was on my side. In the following days, things got even more complicated. Desperate messages and calls from my sisters and their husbands trying to negotiate, apologize, promise that everything would change. But nothing was the same. The relationship was broken, and the damage wasn't just physical, but emotional. I had to seek legal advice, prepare an agreement that included not only reparation for the damages, but also a restraining order to keep the peace. It wasn't easy. At times I wanted to give up, let it go, but I knew that if I didn't set boundaries, history would repeat itself. Finally, the written apologies arrived, along with an initial payment to cover the damages. It wasn't perfect, but it was the first step toward closing a very painful chapter. After months of drama, arguments, and even arrests, there was finally a sign that maybe, just maybe, things could start to calm down. I received an envelope in my office. Inside was a letter signed by my brothers-in-law, accompanied by a cashier's check for $5,000. In that letter, they acknowledged that they had broken the law, that their actions had been wrong, and that they were willing to pay for the damages they caused. It was an unexpected turn of events. They were asking me to do everything possible to get the charges dropped. A clear sign that they wanted to end this conflict. But it wasn't that simple. I had already hired a lawyer to evaluate the situation, and I knew this truce needed to be official and clear to avoid future disputes. We signed a legal agreement that included, in addition to payment for damages, a no-contact clause between us. It was the only way to guarantee there would be no further conflicts. The agreement also included covering the legal fees, which they accepted without any option. Watching my sisters and brothers-in-law sign that document was tense. Screams, complaints, and moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart. But we got them to sign. I went up to the ranch to see the damage in person, and it was devastating. What the photos showed couldn't convey the anger I felt when I saw the smashed door and the signs of that break-in. I called a good friend, and for hours he listened to me vent. That call helped me focus on what was important, closing this chapter. Finally, after meeting with the prosecutor's office, it was agreed that by paying for the damages and signing the agreement, the charges would be reduced. Only a lesser charge of trespassing would remain. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was the closure we needed. With the agreement signed and the charges largely resolved, I thought we could finally breathe easy. But reality showed me that not everything ends on paper. My sisters and their husbands tried again and again, using unknown numbers and insistent messages, begging us to open the gates to the family ranch. They wanted to regain access to the place, which now resembled a fortress with new locks, cameras, and a caretaker who never tired of watching. But we remained firm in our decision, there would be no more access for them. The ranch was no longer a simple meeting place. It had become a symbol of clear boundaries and respect, something that, sadly, never existed before. My parents, who had been the most affected in the midst of everything, decided to keep the ranch for themselves and for us, making it clear that the use of the place would be up to them, not my sisters. For their part, my sisters are facing their own financial problems. They've had to cancel leases on luxury cars, sell expensive toys, and face the reality they'd ignored for so long. What used to be a family conflict with arguments and jealousy is now a much deeper issue: respect, responsibility, and boundaries. It wasn't easy getting here, but it's what allowed us to regain peace. We hired a manager for the ranch, someone trustworthy, who takes care of maintenance and keeps us informed. He is an extension of our peace of mind, and thanks to him, we can enjoy the place without worrying about unpleasant surprises. For now, we remain out of contact with my sisters and their husbands. It's a difficult decision, but a necessary one to protect our mental health and the well-being of my family. I thought the worst was over, but it wasn't. After weeks of silence, the storm struck again, but this time with much more serious consequences. My brothers-in-law, in a desperate and irrational act, forced their way into the family ranch. They used a grinder to cut the chain over the entrance and caused considerable damage to the gate. They tried to break in through the front door, smashing the lock and damaging the wood, until they finally gained access through the basement door. They even broke into the barn, though it's unclear why. All this while my manager and the security cameras captured their every move. The police arrived just in time to stop them. It was complete madness. They not only broke the law, but they betrayed the entire family's trust. They were arrested and faced charges of trespassing, property damage, and threats. I received a call from my manager and the police while I was in vacation mode, not wanting to face that chaos. Reality hit me hard, and I knew this wasn't just a family problem anymore, it was a serious legal matter. I spoke with my lawyers and decided I wouldn't give an inch. I wasn't going to let them destroy what I had worked so hard to build for my parents and for us. We filed charges and moved forward with the legal process. I knew it would be long and exhausting, but it was necessary to protect us and make it clear that these actions would not go unpunished. In the midst of this entire legal battle, my sisters and their husbands tried to negotiate and apologize, but trust was already broken. They offered us money to cover the damages, but the emotional toll and betrayal are priceless. The manager continued to care for the ranch, repairing the damages and ensuring that these incidents would never happen again. This was, without a doubt, the breaking point. After this, family relationships were forever scarred, and I learned that sometimes family doesn't always mean unity, but also setting clear boundaries to protect what truly matters. After months of tension, lawsuits, and drama, it was finally time to close this grueling chapter of my life. The brothers-in-law, after being arrested and facing legal consequences, sent a letter with a sincere apology and a check to cover the damages. It was a shock, and while money can't erase everything, it was a step toward resolution. With the help of my attorney, we signed a formal agreement. They pledged to stay away, cover legal fees, and abide by a no-contact agreement. A tough measure, but necessary to protect our peace and safety. My wife and I agreed to remain steadfast in our no contact with my sisters and their husbands. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only way to prevent toxicity from invading our lives again. My parents, although disappointed by everything that had happened, understood our position and were grateful that we were able to protect the property and maintain control. They decided to continue enjoying the ranch in their own way, and for now we won't be selling the property, although I don't rule out doing so in the future if the situation doesn't improve. I learned a lot from this experience. That sometimes money and effort aren't enough to maintain family peace. That setting boundaries is an act of self-love and protection. It's been several months since all this started, and although the wound hasn't fully healed yet, I can say with certainty that blocking my sisters and their husbands has brought a peace I didn't remember having. It's funny how silence and distance can soothe the emotional burden. I realized how much that constant drama, that exhausting interplay of resentments and broken expectations, was hurting me. I'm not saying they're bad people, or that family doesn't matter. They were simply toxic people in our lives. People who only generated stress and unresolved conflicts. Although the property is technically mine and my wife's, we always bought it with my parents in mind. They now enjoy it in peace, without drama, and that's what matters. My parents are calm, away from the fights, and that comforts me. They didn't want to get involved in these disputes, and that's exactly what we've achieved, protecting them and our peace of mind. As for my sisters, I know they're going through difficult times, but it's not my responsibility to save them or clean up their problems. What I can control is setting healthy boundaries to keep toxicity from invading my life.